Hello and welcome. Objective of this video is to learn how to manage users groups very efficiently using IAM. IAM, Identity and Access Management, is a free offering of AWS. To accomplish this objective, let's take a use case and try to understand how the users and groups can be created and managed in a very efficient manner. So here is one given use case where two of the employees, Kelvin and Arun, joins organization. You can assume this is your organization where your two of the employees joins the organization on a same day. And Kelvin joins as a senior software developer. Arun joins as project manager, PM. Your manager asks you to go and create users and required accesses for Kelvin and Arun. As Kelvin has joined as a senior software developer, he needs programmatic access. Programmatic accesses enables the user to interact with AWS APIs over the CLI SDK or any other uh, options utility which allows to interact with the AWS APIs. Arun joins as a manager, so he doesn't require a programmatic access. He might not be required to run the commands or execute the programs or codes. So he needs GUI access, which is the management console. Next day, this use case continues, and the next day, Lucy, a new joiner to Kelvin's team, she joins as a DevOps engineer, where she can be having a similar access as Kelvin. So Kelvin has some of the programmatic access to the AWS, and now Lucy may inherit or use the similar access. Plus, on top of that, Lucy may have some additional access as well, but primarily, Lucy is also going to have a programmatic access. That means she is going to, moreover, prefer to use the CLI or SDK or both to interact with AWS. And further, you have to create a user for Lucy and give a same permission as a Kelvin's, so that she can have a similar access, and additionally if required you can also give a additional access, but this is the moreover use case to achieve. So to uh, complete this use case or to achieve this use case, let's first log into the AWS services management console. Once you're logged into AWS management console, you can locate the service IAM from the services, either from the category of service security, identity and compliance IAM, or you can type alternatively into the search box and click on the service name. Once you land up in the dashboard of IAM, you can see users, roles, groups, policies, all of these options available. First, we'll go very naive way of creating the user and managing the policy for him, and then we'll try to achieve in a bit better way of handling the uh, policies for user using the groups. So let's start with the basic way. Click on the add user and you will see the screen like this. Here you can give the user name as a Kelvin, and Kelvin is joining the dev team, so he's going to require most of the time CLI SDK option. So he is going to interact with AWS APIs using the CLI or SDK or any other such development tools. So let's take programmatic access for him and go to the next permissions window. We are choosing the third option. This will allow us to choose the policies and directly attach the policies to user Kelvin. So here you can choose one or more policies which is relevant to the job function of user Kelvin. So he is a developer. I'm going to give him the access on S3 primarily. So I'm going to give a full access right now. I do not care much about what permissions I'm giving. So I can choose any of the policies. But in real time, you have to see which policy makes sense for the user uh, which belongs to developer group. And I've just chosen two of the policies, and these two policies will be seen into the next screen. You can skip these screens and review which all policies you have selected for user Kelvin. When you create the user Kelvin will have these two accesses, the full access on S3 bucket and objects, plus also the EC2 full access, which will allow him to play with EC2 by launching, terminating, stopping, upgrading the instance types, and various other things that he want to do. Once the user is created, he will be created with the access key and secret key ID. So these two informations are something which you can see here, access key ID and the secret access key. Either you can download the CSV file and attach in a mail to send to Kelvin, and then he can start um, configuring his AWS CLI, or if he is using the development SDK, he can start keeping these keys into his environment and start coding for interacting with AWS APIs. So for that, I have covered into the separate video. You can refer my channel to find the AWS CLI configurations, and you will find the video which covers this part. So let's close and review the user once again. So this user, Kelvin, is created with two of the options which will enable him to develop on EC2 and S3. So let's go back and create one more user called Arun. So as per the requirement here, the Arun joins as a project manager. So this time we are going to create a user Arun with permission, the access type as a access AWS management console access. We have an option to either choose the auto-generated password, which is going to be managed by AWS, and we do not have to do, or we can use the custom password, which is the option I'm going to choose here. Uh, this password, either you can communicate to Arun using email service of AWS, or you can pass on using your organization's standard process. The last option, require password reset, will force the user to reset his password as soon as he logs into the AWS first time. Again, we'll choose the last option here, attach existing policies directly, and these existing policies comes as a two category. One is AWS managed. So all of these policies that you see, 472 policies as of the date, are AWS factory made policies. These are coming from the AWS side, but not necessarily in the all of the situation you will find these policies helping to control your user access, right? So in such cases, you have option to go and create the policy more conditional way, the more custom way, so that it suits the requirement. So right now we are going to just stick to the one which is AWS managed, and here I'm going to give the project manager just for a test, a CloudWatch full access, and move on. So tag we are skipping for now, but it's one of the important area. Once created, these two users will reflect in the users tab, and we have two of the users. Arun is uh, he is a management console user, so he is going to access the whole thing using the URL which is mentioned over here. So this is the information that you are going to also pass on to Arun so that he will be able to manage his account from the management console. Coming back, this is the basic way. So suppose if I have a tons of users which are onboarding every day or every month, how I'm going to use this kind of uh, process to onboard all of them into IAM if I require to onboard them into IAM. So let's delete it and see the different way how we should practice and use that process. So firstly, we'll go and create the required groups before we create the users. So first, we'll create a dev group, which is going to be uh, uh, having the permissions related to whatever the developers require to function their job. So in this, I'm going to attach the policy which is required for all the developers. So for example, I'll just take S3 full access and also EC2 full access. This is just a sample one. So, but you can choose the one that suits your need and create the group. This will uh, enable any of the user becoming part of dev group. They will be automatically having these two permissions. So now let's go back to the groups and create one more group for project manager. So I can say this group as a project manager and policy wise I can select uh, maybe CloudWatch full access. So remember this is just a sample permission that I'm trying to configure here, but you can choose the permissions which suits to the job role and create a group. So we have a two of the groups. Now what we are going to do is next moving to the users and create two of the users. So day one, Arun and Kelvin. Kelvin is developer and Arun is project manager. So I'm going to create two of the users separately. So firstly, Kelvin as a programmatic access. Kelvin is developer, so he requires SDK or CLI or both of them. So I have to give this access type to him and move on. Permission wise, this time we are going to use a first option to make the Kelvin part of dev group where the accesses are appropriately set and then complete the process of creating the user. So user for Kelvin is created. The moment Kelvin is now created inside the IAM, his user is created inside the IAM, he will require the access key ID and secret key ID, secret access key basically to be able to interact with the AWS APIs using the CLI and SDK or SDK. Coming back, adding the another user called Arun. So user Arun is project manager and he needs access type as a management console as he will be using the AWS services most of the time as through the GUI, the one that I'm logged in from. So this is nothing but management console access. So for him, either I can allow depend on AWS to generate the password and give it to me so that I can pass on to Kelvin or ask AWS to send the password as an email, or I can create a custom password and follow my organization standard to send this password through the standard channels. The last option enforces again to the Arun user to be resetting the password on the first login. So let's follow the practice over here. And the user Arun is going to be part of project manager You can have the scenario where you will have the user belonging to two of the groups or more than one group. So that is quite possible. In that case, both of the groups permissions will be uh, reduced. That means that it will be taken into the compilation, and then accordingly the policy will apply, and his access will be set based on the policies defined in a different groups. Moving on, here the tabs you can as usual skip it. Clicking on the create user will create the user for Arun. Uh, Few of the information which will be necessary when you create the management console user to provide the details to the user is the URL for signing in. This is this one, and the passwords that you have created. So either you have auto-generated the password, so you have to send out the email, or you have to follow your standard process of organization to send out the mail, which is your custom password. You can copy through the mail and encrypt it using the PGP or configured utility and send it out. And Arun will be able to access his account. Coming back to the requirement, and here we have third day, second day, Lucy joins to Kelvin's team as a DevOps, and she requires the same permission as Arun. So we are going to add Lucy, and she is going to have a similar access type also as Arun, because she will be using the CLI SDK such tools to interact with AWS APIs. In the permissions window, you can give the same group as Arun, and she will have a similar permission, the same permission as what Arun has. You can skip this and finally click on the create user. You will see the Lucy is created. Her access key ID and secret access key will be different, so you have to download and provide the same thing in the mail or the standard process that you have in your organization. Never reveal this informations. Do not share to through the mail or through any of the open forum. I'm going to delete all of these users, so there's no such risk or threat. So coming back, suppose if we would have not had the concept of groups, then for all the repetitive user which require the similar permission as Arun would require the same exercise to be done. So here we have at least reusing the policy selections. And in real time, you can have a complex policies which you will handle through the custom policy creation. And if you have to do it manually every time or programmatic sorry in a command way also, many times it's a time taking process. So instead, if you configure it as a group and do it as a group assigning to the user, that is more easier. So let's review the group and see who is where. So in the dev, you have two users, and these are the two users. In the uh, in the project manager, Arun is there. So suppose Arun leaves the organization, you can simply remove Arun from the this group, and Arun will not have any longer accesses on the AWS resources. If new resources joins the project manager team, then you can simply create the user and add the user to this group. That's all. So it becomes more simplistic and less time taking. It saves lots of time for you. Thanks all for watching. See you in the next video.